You mentioned you want to play more. Everybody wants to play. And when I think back on our championships, I never think about who was on the ice or who didn't get a shift that single game. You remember the good times, the times in the dressing room, the times on the bus, the people you were able to accomplish things with. It never comes back to, well, I only got to play 4 minutes that game. That's never what you remember.
That was Jayna Hefford, and this is the Connor Carrick Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Connor Carrick Podcast. I am your host, Connor Carrick, current defenseman for the New Jersey Devils. Today, we will talk with Jayna Hefford, 5-time Olympic medalist, 4 golds. She's a 2018 Hockey Hall of Fame inductee, a 2019 recipient of the Hockey Order in Canada. She will give us some insight into her journey, how she developed into having the Hall of Fame career that she did. I gained so much from this conversation. Truly an exceptional individual. I trust her as one of the leaders in women's hockey to take their professional game to the next level. I'm super excited to share with you what we learned today. Jayna Hefford. Jayna, I told you before we started the show when we were chatting a bit, I'm going to read your accolades in the intro after we're done. I think it'd take us 15, 20 minutes just to get from top to bottom. Hockey Hall of Famer in 2018. I was looking through the speech on YouTube. That's honestly been something I've always tried to make sure I see every year is the Hall of Fame induction. Mm-hmm. I am super excited to talk today because I think there's really 3 elements of your hockey career that I'm super interested in, and I think our listener would want to know about, like your youth and your development of greatness and what it was like growing up as a young lady in hockey. Mm-hmm. The actual production of your greatness, the story of your greatness, your career, the crux of it, almost 2 decades for Team Canada, which has always been, I think the highlight of women's hockey in terms of attention. And of course, your professional career with the CWHL, and just, we'll get into that, your role with the PWHPA and the growth of women's hockey. And that kind of segues into the third leg of your career, which is this sense of mission, this you want to create a platform for others to create their greatness. And, I've thought a lot about that as we are, the NHL's on pause with, COVID-19, mm-hmm. and it's hard not to imagine, what incredible playoff game might be on TV tonight.
Right.
And as fans and lovers of the game, we're not privy to that. That game isn't able to go on. It's a luxury that, maybe we as sports fans took for granted a little bit. I first heard your name. I actually presented an award, oddly enough, on your behalf to Jamie Lee Rattray. Yep. Yeah. And I think it was 2019. And then I became more familiar with your story in doing some research for our time today. What an amazing career you had. Truly something you should be special about. I know you talked about in your Hall of Fame speech, you talked about Beth Duff and, sort of your family, but take us back to growing up in Kingston, Ontario, and where your love for the game and where your passion really developed.
Yeah, really fortunate to grow up in an environment like I did. Kingston, Ontario is a great hockey town, as I'm sure you know, the names of Doug Gilmour and Kirk Muller and Don Cherry and all these infamous guys that have had such a huge impact on the game. So grew up within that, but I really think my passion for the game was pretty innate from as young as I can remember. All I wanted to do was play the game, and it didn't matter if my dad made a rink in the backyard. I have an older brother who played. My parents were both pretty involved in coaching and managing, but anytime I could play the game, whether it was road hockey or on the backyard rink or actually on the ice playing, it was just I don't know. It's all I ever wanted to do, and I feel so fortunate that I could live out that passion. And that, I talked a little bit in my speech about the idea that my parents allowed me to just dream what wasn't normal and what wasn't common. And although I realized I was doing something most girls weren't, I never felt like I shouldn't be doing it. They encouraged me from the very beginning. And I think that's one of the most important things I learned, although I didn't know at the time it was so valuable.
I was always jealous. I spent some time as a Toronto Maple Leaf up in Canada. The nationwide, it seems, love for hockey. Like it seems you get a pair of skates with your birth certificate up there. And I just loved the way we were embraced in the community. It really is, it's almost cliche, the beauty of growing up on the backyard rink and things like that. But what a beautiful, picture you paint. And that was always a conversation in my home too, because I grew up with 3 boys with NHL aspirations. And, the conversation in our house was always, why not? Like, someone's going to play in the NHL. Why not you?
Mm-hmm. And how lucky, right? Everyone doesn't have that ability.
When I saw it, and I guess I'm also curious just in terms of your development, as a young girl, like I know as a young player, I was very committed. That your commitment, your sense of conviction comes through just in your voice when you could be talking about anything and you just have this, you have this inner strength that comes through, so clearly. When did you really start taking the game seriously, and what were sort of the habits that you built growing up that created your success? Because you were given permission to dream, which is special, right?
Yep.
But you also went to work on that talent and built yourself into, the Hall of Fame career you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that passion was just something that I think flowed through me from such a young age. And I really just went with it. And, I love the NHL. I love watching the NHL. I grew up loving the New Jersey Devils because Kirk Muller was, Kirk Muller was the #1 draft pick, in his year, and being a Kingston guy. So I grew up in loving John McClain and John Terreri and all those guys. And, so I remember, my kids now, they love art and they draw all the time. And I remember as a kid drawing, but I always used to draw hockey pictures. That's what I used to love, to draw pictures of goalies and different things. And it just, I'm a person that I guess is just driven by that passion. And I want to live that passion every day and try to find something that matters to me. And so that passion was there. And then, from the actual performance side of things, I just, I knew at a young age I was pretty good. Always, I actually wanted to be a goalie when I was young, and my parents gently guided me otherwise. But I just always, I was good, but I just wanted to get better all the time. And, I worked at it. And, I remember as probably a 11 or 12-year-old girl, it'd be like my dad had some weights and stuff in the basement, and I would go and I'd do some stuff on my own because I thought that's how I was going to get better. Didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but eventually, through that and playing other sports and, I was on the ice whenever I could. And you mentioned Beth Duff, who I talked about in my speech, and she was my coach for over 10 years in minor hockey. And again, a woman coaching a team that you didn't see that a lot either. And my mom was a team manager. And there was one season we played over 80 games. And we would drive, 30 minutes from Kingston and play a boys team. And then we'd drive a couple hours somewhere else and play another game same day. And I was fortunate to be around this group of people that all seemed to have the same passion and just really, loved it and lived it. And I think that's a big part of who I am and the success I had.
That's very much how, I grew up in terms of the roller hockey and the road hockey, the fighting over shinny sticks and things like that. I've really tried to reconnect as the NHL's been on pause. Like I dusted off the rollerblades. I think it's been 10 years since I've rollerbladed, but I used to do that as a kid, go out and pretend I was Pavel Bure or Joe Sakic. And, I was very much, I would read something and I'd try and steal it. Like I would try to steal greatness from people. I remember, I think I read something about, how Jonathan Toews would like put his rollerblades on before school. And all of a sudden for like a month, I was getting up 5 a.m., skating before school. And it's been interesting. Life in the NHL is good. Pay is good, hotels, things like that, things that the PWHPA is trying to strive for in time. And we'll get there. Mm-hmm. But, it's been an interesting like reflection as I try to like reconnect with just keeping the game as a pure passion. Like when I was a kid during this time, is you look back and you touched on when you talked about your children, like would I I'm a pro now, but would I go back to the 6 a.m. skates? You know, you know what I mean? Like, would I go back to playing 5 games in 2.5 days with the soggy gear that's aired out in your hotel room?
Right.
And like, oh, those memories just bring you right back. They're so textured, you know?
Yeah.
This game. And I think that's where the mutual respect for anyone that has achieved success in this sport. Like, our stories are all so similar. It's a very family oriented game. It's very gritty. You got to put your gear on. Everybody gets hit at some point. Everybody gets hurt at some point. You know, and that's what I was really reconnecting with in watching your Hall of Fame speech, you know, last night as I was prepping, was what a special sport. Like, what a special game to be able to dream about growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, to bring back to me and my kids, it's like, I want them to experience it, not because they're going to play in the NHL or they're going to play in the Olympics, but because what it gives you and what I feel like it gave me was just so valuable. And maybe you can get it in other team sports, but there's still something about hockey that to me seems different. There's the team aspect, but you spend so much time in the dressing room together, and those are things that not every sport has. And I want them to experience those moments that I would, you know, just it's the only thing I wanted to do as a young kid. Those were the best times.
And I even tried to, like, in a lot of my social media on Instagram and things like that, I get asked a lot about, you know, workouts that I do and you know, videos that I watch or what I'm doing in this downtime to try and stay sharp. And you touched on it a little bit where you discussed other sports. And I think that hockey, at least in Illinois, where I'm from, I'm from Chicago, has become very much like a 365-day gig, which I know as an NHLer, where this is my profession, this is how I feed my family. It's hard to maintain like the same juice 365 days a year for the game. You can't do something every day. You know, eventually it'll just become a little bit lackluster. So I've tried to urge, you know, kids and parents that are listening to this to, you know, expose your kid to other sport. We still think hockey's the best.
Yeah,
we won't, you know, hide our cards that way, but, you know, just maybe pick up some of those lessons from, you know, other sports.
Yeah. And, you know, I always felt like the best players I played with were just the ones you could tell were great athletes. I played with a lot of great hockey players that you knew weren't great athletes in other sports. And then you see the ones that are really great, and they could pick up a soccer ball or a baseball bat or a golf club, and they're pretty good at everything. And I think, you know, just remembering that it's important to do those other things, and they actually make you a better hockey player. And when I was young, I wanted to play summer hockey so badly, and my parents wouldn't let me. And at the time, I didn't understand it. But looking back, I'm so thankful, because, you know, you listen to any expert, and they all tell you don't do it, but people still do it.
Yeah, you just got to keep that pilot lit. You just got to keep that hunger for the game, you know, just slightly unsatisfied, like practice all the way up until you think you're done. And then, you know, I feel like you cut it off and make sure you're hungry for the next day. No, that's wonderful. And, you know, certainly jealous growing up. You know, I remember the first time I ever went to Canada, just seeing all the outdoor rinks and things like that. It's so cliche, but it's beautiful. It's what a game we're both, you know, a part of.
Yeah, it's such an amazing part of our culture, and it brings out something in, I'll say Canadians, because I see it, that's so different from anything else. And it really is incredible. We're not a boisterous country, but when it comes to hockey, we're tough.
Yeah, it's different. It's
and
different.
Proud.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Jayna, that's kind of we can wrap up a bit about, you know, your youth and your childhood and development of your sport. I want to get into a little bit of about your career. 5-time Olympic medalist, 4 golds. We won't talk about the other one. You know, and you know, there was one quote we can start with. You had a quote at your 2018 Hockey Hall of Fame speech. You were talking to your partner Kathleen Koth, is it? K-U-K Koth?
Koth, yeah.
And I just thought this was outstanding. I mean, I was quote, "Thank you for understanding what it takes to compete at the highest level. The focus, the commitment, the selfishness at times. Thank you for the many sacrifices that you made that allowed me to continue to play the game." And I relate to, you know, when I was younger, you I remember amongst my friends, always hyper competitive. Hated to lose. We'd play in wiffle ball at a birthday party, and I'd throw a fit because I didn't agree with the call, and I wasn't always the best sport, but certainly competitive. I remember the focus, growing up in terms of every season, every summer, I was very goal oriented. I'd write them down. I had coaches that demanded that of me, and that was a great practice that I still enjoy and apply now to other areas of my life. The commitment and the selfishness. And, those are two that I think people don't understand. If you're not in pro sport, if you're not at the top of your game for as long as you were, it's hard to understand the ends you have to go to maintain that commitment. And just sometimes how difficult it is to communicate that selfishness with your loved ones, with family, with, because I've done it in my own career. Hey, sorry, Dad, I know we're playing in Chicago. I can't see you after the game. I've got a sore groin lately. I want to make sure I'm, doing the stretches I need to after the game. But what does that quote mean to you, and why did you choose those words?
Well, I think selfishness has such a negative connotation, but I think when you're an athlete at the highest level, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And it's something that you are 24/7, and it can become very much about yourself all the time. It's like, did I sleep enough? I need a nap. Did I eat well enough? What am I going to do now? Did I work hard enough? I'm sore. How do I feel better? It's just all about you all the time. And it has to be in many cases. So I think, having someone that understands that and sees that as your ability to excel and be the best version of yourself, versus being like, well, geez, I wish we could just go out tonight, but you need to go to bed early. That's no fun, right? Like everything else, I think having someone that really understands what you love and understands your need to be the best version of yourself and what that takes. It's not an easy thing, but I think when somebody sees that in you and they see that makes you the best version of you, they work with it. And they help you be that. So, that I think that's how I see it. And, I realized once I got out of sport how self-indulged you are in sport. And, it's especially, again, it keeps coming back to kids, but it's no longer, it's not about me anymore. And it's, for a long time, I was able to do those things I needed to do. And you just have to compete at the highest level. There's no way around that.
It's interesting you say that. I was texting with Travis Zajac to keep the Devils lineage going. And he is just like the consummate pro. I can't wait to have him on the podcast. We're close friends. He's got like a devout studiousness to his game, to his how he goes about his life. And we've been texting each other on quarantine, like pictures of our workout setup or what we've been doing, as a way to try and keep each other, sort of honest. And I just texted him the one day. I go, man, like you're just hitting on 1,000 games, but you prep like you're trying to play 1,000 more. And that was directly what he texted back. He goes, it's a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And until, you really go pro in something, it's something abstract. Like that is the beauty, I guess, of the selfishness is there is a direct goal and you become so in tune with your process growing up that you become a machine, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point about Travis, it's just, the best never take it for granted. They want to continue to be better. And, I'd like to think the same, that I'd like to think I trained better as I got older in my last few years, but I never took for granted the opportunity I had to play for my country. It never got old. I played for 17 years, but it was just as exciting in my 17th year to put on that Canadian jersey as it was in my first.
Well, let's talk about that. Take me through, we can start with the highlight because we can talk about all 5 Olympics. I'm not sure how much time you got, but take me through, I'm curious about a couple things. Like I want to know your favorite, let's start with your favorite memory. What was your favorite memory for Team Canada?
It's tough. I get asked this question a lot. I think if I had to pick one, it would most likely be our first gold medal in Salt Lake City, 2002. As you know, we lost in '98, and hockey is one of those sports where you don't win a silver medal, you lose the gold medal. So, those are tough things, and the expectations were there for us to win. So, 4 years later, being able to win our first one, and it was in the U.S., and we hadn't beaten the American women all season, and so it was a bit of a Cinderella story, and you never forget the first one for sure.
It sounds, 2002. That's it. I mean, and it is incredible, the rivalry between U.S. Canada now. For the women's game. And the women's game, continues to grow on the international stage, but there's something about the red, white, and blue playing the red and white, in Canada that I grew up in the same hometown as Kendall Coyne. So I think I've seen the distaste for the other side but respect, the incredible respect for the other side. What was maybe the most heartbreaking memory you've had in this game?
I mean, certainly losing in 1998, and I was quite young at the time. I was only my second year with the national team, but that that whole idea of it was the first time women's hockey was in the Olympics. So whether you were a rookie or you were a veteran, it really didn't matter because none of us knew what to expect. The intensity of that event, of that season, was something we had never seen before. The interest in it, the expectations, as I said, as you know, in playing in Canada, it's probably like playing in the Leafs. That's the expectation is that you always win. And as an athlete, you love that.
Right.
To me, it meant people cared. It mattered how you performed, and those are great things. But, to come home with a silver medal from the first Olympic Games, that was certainly tough. But I will say I learned so much from that experience, and a big believer in learning from, good or bad experiences. But the idea of, for me, it was really about just staying present and staying in the moment, because there was all this excitement about just getting to the Olympics and the opportunity to play for a gold medal and how great that was going to be. And I looked back on the season and really felt like I kind of just let it slide because I just couldn't wait to get there. And we had an opportunity that was our first chance to really be what we would consider professional athletes, where we could, live together, train together every day, travel the world, challenge yourself against the best players every day. And I didn't appreciate those moments. And, from that time on, I really focused on that concept of staying present and enjoying the moment. And certainly that's a life lesson, but it's one that really resonated with me through that experience.
And that's something I've even tried to bottle up in my personal life for sure. In my professional life, like the authenticity when ex-players shake your hand and look at you and say, please enjoy this. Like, I know you care about success. I know you want to win. I know you're frustrated about your lack of power play time, whatever, but I'm telling you now, please, like, for the love of God, I'm on the other side. Enjoy this.
Yeah, 100%. And I think about that too. And you mentioned you want to play more. Everybody wants to play. And when I think back on our championships, I never think about who was on the ice or who didn't get a shift that single game. When you're all done, it doesn't matter. What you remember is the collective success. You remember standing on the blue line, hearing your country's anthem. You remember the good times, the times in the dressing room, the times on the bus, the people you were able to accomplish things with. It never comes back to, well, I only got to play 4 minutes that game. That's never what you remember.
And there is something just about that heightened commitment. I have a little bit of international experience with World Junior and the under 18s and that, never been able to make men's worlds, never been able to be an Olympian or play in the World Cup. But there is something about when you're wearing your country's colors, that sense of mission is just, it's so special. There really is such a buy-in, especially in those so short tournaments. Over the course of a career, like, you're jockeying always. There's 82 games. There's just so many opportunities to be, happy with your ice time, frustrated with your ice time, whatever. You're competing for next year for contracts and things like that. But there's just something about that togetherness of international play that is so special.
And I mean, I think you touched on it. For us, it's all about that winning the gold medal. And that's sort of where it ends for every single group, is trying to win a gold medal, and then you start to do it again. And but yeah, playing for your country, it's that responsibility. It's that idea of carrying the torch and the tradition. We had such strong tradition in our program, and wanting to keep that going and not wanting to let that slide for the next generation of players that were going to come. And I had a chance to play with so many incredible leaders and people that made such a difference in my career, and hoping that I could do that for others, because that's the only way you stay healthy and you stay strong and you continue to grow as a program.
I'm glad you brought that up in terms of some of the leaders you were able to learn from, because I am curious just for who else I want to call up and see if I can get them on the podcast. But who are some of the most incredible women that you played with? Who were some of your favorite, maybe not favorite, but teammates that you most respected over all the years of going to war?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I can easily say the best captain I ever played for was Cassie Campbell, and she was someone that, at some points in her career, she was an all-star, and in some points in her career, she was a fourth liner. But it didn't change who she was to our team, who she was in the dressing room. You rarely find players like that are more concerned about how everybody else is feeling than themselves, even know that, they're fighting for a position on the team too. And, so, I still look to her for advice and guidance in many ways, and love what she's done for our game. Another player would be Vicky Sunahara, who's a great friend of mine, and we played together in our club careers in addition to Team Canada. And again, one of those people that just brings out the best in everyone. And she could tell you the worst news, and the person would still smile and hug her. Like she's just got this infectious personality that brought out the best in everyone. And so I look at now some of the young women, younger than me, that are still playing, and man, there's some great people and leaders and ambassadors. And I know a lot of them, and we can speak about Kendall. And I mean, I'm so impressed with what she has done in this last year and two. And I didn't know her that well prior to getting involved with the PWHPA, but seeing what she did at the All-Star game obviously was, it put our game 10 years ahead at least, if not further. And I always think about, the pressure under which she skated. It wasn't like anybody else skating.
Unbelievable. I got chills right now thinking about if she falls, she took me through, and we can, let's just get right to it where we're trying to, I guess it's been an obvious choice for me, not even a choice, but to try and champion the women's game and try to further the women's game, because I don't see the difference. Like women's fans are fans of the men's game, and men's game, can be fans of the women's game. And if there's just more fans in hockey, there's more money in hockey, there's more business, all that. But I talked to Kendall a little bit about the decision-making process and like the different dialogue between the NHL and the NHLPA, and I am going to talk to Kendall too, so I don't want to tell her story for her, but like the nerves must have been incredible, because it's not like a game, right? Like you've played in big games. What are you saying to yourself? Just get hit once, just make a play, just make one play, and now you're in it.
Yeah, and if you make a mistake, it's not over, right?
No, you got the whole game,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I think you were about to say there, if she slipped, she lost one edge, everybody would have said, yeah, we told you so, right? Like women can't play the game. Obviously. Which
would have been totally unfair. Like you and I both know, like Kendall Coyne's north-south skating ability and crossover is world-class. Like I run a hockey camp in the summer for kids, and Kendall has been gracious enough to come out the last couple of years, and she'll usually, hang out. And I tell all my coaches, it's like usually my brothers and Kendall, all very qualified for the talent level that we're coaching, to coach away. And she's always very engaged, very involved. And then afterwards, she always whips that gold medal out and takes pictures. But I have her demonstrate the crossovers, because her crossover is far better than mine. Her balance, her center, it's unbelievable. So I look forward to getting Kendall on. And I think the women's game in general has done a really nice job carrying that torch. Like the leaders of the women's game, I'm familiar more on the US side, but with Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne, like they're trying to engage young girls. They're trying to have a presence on social media and different ways to bring more eyeballs and hopefully more money and more attention to the women's game. because it is something, and you see it at the Olympics, during the Winter Games, the attention it can get at the highest level. It just needs the organization to be in place and that. Talk a little bit about your mission there.
Yeah, so with the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, I think, we really just got to the point where we decided the time is now. If we don't stand up for ourselves as female athletes, over the course of my career, I played in 3 different versions of a women's quote unquote professional league, and far from professional, but they survive for a bit, and somebody puts some money into them, and then they get tired of losing money and it folds and another one starts. And as I said, my whole career I went through that. So when the CWHL folded, I think it was really finally that time where it opened the door for the players to really step up and make a statement, speak up for their beliefs. You look at the NHL All-Star Game. We talked about Kendall's, event, but when you look at even this year and the impact that game had, it's just when it's on that platform, we can't do that without that sort of platform.
No.
And a lot of people, keep hearing, just be patient. It takes time. And I think we're at the point now where it's not time, it's investment, right? Time is going to happen. It's been time for a long time, but we need someone to really seriously invest in the game. And so the PWHPA is saying that until there's a professional league that provides a number of aspects of what you would expect in a professional league, that the women aren't going to just play in some other league. And that comes down to infrastructure. It comes down to resources. It comes down to, daily ice time, full-time staffs, medical and health insurance, a lot of things that everybody just assumes professional athletes have. And,
right.
and obviously you're a great person that can compare it, but there's little things like, having clean towels after a game. That doesn't exist in professional women's hockey. It's such a little thing. But so I think we just got to that point where the time is now to stand up and really try to create some positive change for the women's game. And, I do have to also thank you, because you have been a champion for us. And, it's so valuable. I don't even know if you understand how valuable it is to have a guy in the game that stands up for the women. And there are a few, there's definitely a few that have done that. But, as soon as an NHL player says it, some NHL fans think, oh, maybe it's okay then. Maybe it is okay that women play. And wow, these women are kind of fast. And now a lot of the guys have grown up with women that they played against or played with, or they have sisters that played. And I think, as I think you mentioned earlier, it's just, you don't see it any differently. The women train just as hard. They compete. They're as intense. They love the game. They're great ambassadors. And, we just want to leave the game better than where it is now. And our women are committed to that. And we have incredible leaders within that.
Well, and there is an element too, where the game will continue to grow once it's got, some solid footing. Like I even experienced it in the summer, right? So in the summer, as a player, you're responsible for booking your own ice. You don't have trainers there. You don't have, food like you would in an NHL rink before and after practice. So, and then you get to, training camp, and you're able to have that singular focus. And, I was honestly curious about the 98 Olympics, with it being the first event, with some of that lack of infrastructure, if that was an issue at all during tournaments. Because I know in international tournaments, you're always trying to, eliminate distractions and have that focus. And I was wondering about that, like, because there are certain things, given the way our sport is played, that you need on hand. And, were there any roadblocks at those 98 Olympics? And aside from the towels, like, I don't want to say are there any horror stories, but, what was some of the most difficult parts of playing in the 3 professional leagues that you played in? Like, what are some of the details?
Yeah, I think that, when you talk about the international events, when we get to compete for our country, Hockey Canada, I can only speak to Hockey Canada. I can't speak to USA Hockey, but, we did have what we needed. But again, that was really once a year for a World Championships, or once every 4 years for an Olympic Games. It wasn't a day in and day out kind of environment that we had. So when we weren't with them, that's where the club hockey comes in. And as I said, I played in 3 different leagues. In 2002, I came back from the Olympics, and a new league had started, and it was called the NWHL, not the same as the one that exists today, but the original NWHL here in Canada. And it had private owners. So we had ownership. I played in Brampton, Ontario, and I actually had housing provided. And I got to live in this house for 5 years in Brampton, no cost. So you can decide what that's worth. But by the time I finished in 2013 in the CWHL, I had no salary, I had no gas money, I had no housing, I didn't have any of that. So we go through these waves of, is the game growing or is it not growing? And we just don't feel like the game at the professional club level has gotten much better over the course of, even 20 years, really. It's sort of been up and down depending on who's there at the moment and who's investing in it.
Well, and are you, I guess, proud of your women's leaders? Because you talked a little bit about it, but you said in your Hall of Fame speech, when our voices are united, we become too loud to ignore. Do you feel you've been able to achieve that with the PWHPA?
I think we're on our way to it. We had 180 players this year that were part of our association, and very fortunate to have Billie Jean King on our board and Alana Kloss, and they are advisors to us, I guess. And Billie Jean's big thing for us is really about having one voice, and the only way you can accomplish this is by having a singular voice. So that's been a huge focus for us. But it's difficult. There's still a lot of people that don't understand the landscape of the women's game, and not because they don't care, but it's just hard to get that out there. It's not mainstream. So anytime we have, people like you or someone, in the media that talks about it and really helps to explain the challenges that these women are facing, that's another sort of check mark, but we're not there yet, certainly, but I think we're on our way to creating something really positive.
And I guess that's why it's so obvious for me to try and support the women's game, because everything I love about the men's game is alive and well in the women's game. In all the women's hockey players that I know, they share with you like this sense of conviction that the game should be played the right way and prepared for properly. There's a sense of mission. I think there's something very powerful about, a lot of women, I'm sure, faced some struggles growing up where, isn't that a boys' game, or had to play with boys. And to see that perseverance for their passion is something that I'll always throw a stake in the ground and support. I think the women leaders have taken the concept of hockey being in the entertainment industry seriously. They've given insight into their lives. They've welcomed people to learn more about their process. And I think even the NHL has been behind in that regard, in respect to the NBA and the NFL and some of these other sports that have been more forward thinking and been more aggressive, whether, social media is the obvious one because it's very in your face, but just in general, in terms of valuing and taking care of the fans' attention to give them a product, that's really strong. I think the NHL's, trying to continue to grow that way. And the women's leaders of the game, I feel, have taken that seriously. And then really for me, I want to support dreamers. I want to support dreams. I was so role model oriented growing up. You talked about your favorite players growing up on some of your Devils teams, Kirk Muller and Dougie Gilmore. And, I grew up with it, whether it was Joe Sakic and Pavel Bure. Even as a young man growing up in Chicago, I wonder how good I could have been. Like, I almost feel cheated because the Blackhawks used to not be on TV growing up. Right. So because it was kind of those dark ages. So the only time I ever caught hockey really, my favorite team growing up was the Avalanche and the Red Wings of all teams. Because those were the only teams I saw. They would go head to head in the playoffs. 2001, I was 7 at the time with the Avs. And, I guess if I can help support, create a platform for anybody, and particularly women's athletes, because I've seen in hockey how hard they work and how much they love this great game. If I can help create that platform for the creation of role models, so we're not cheated, of the magic, the magical plays that could be going on right now, even with the NHL on pause, I don't understand, and I guess I challenge fellow NHLers. I don't totally understand how you couldn't support that.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously we're trying to create something for these amazing, talented, skilled players. But we also know that by creating a professional women's league, we're going to allow young girls to have that dream, whether they make it or not. We're going to help young girls stay in sport longer. We're going to create a vision of something that just, becomes a possibility. And again, I have 2 daughters, and my oldest daughter is 7, and she actually just said last night, we were having dinner, and she said something about, why are all my favorite shows, most of the characters are boys? And, she's realizing what she's seeing.
Yeah.
And she's going to, make her own assumptions and look at what she sees as being realistic. Now, this is something that clearly, it's changing, but she's realizing this as a 7-year-old, that a lot of the shows she watches, right? And we're starting to see more. She loves Frozen, of course, and there's, a female lead in that. But she's also, made reference to the fact that girls don't play football. And so she's observing all these things. So as long as young girls don't see professional female athletes, they're never going to see that as a realistic goal of something to achieve. And not that they need to be the athlete, but I want them to learn all those great leadership skills and attributes through sport that's going to help them in business or in community leadership. And they're going to miss out on that if they drop out of sport too early. So, I think what we're trying to achieve is, it's for hockey, but it's also for the betterment of young girls in our society. And I think that's something that we're also, really passionate about.
I know you were talking about the other day on your social media, you were talking about watching the WNBA draft. Mm-hmm. And what that was like. And I think Kendall had mentioned something about, just how special it was watching as well. Talk about what parallels you're trying to draw from that league. What have they done well? What are you witnessing as someone in a leadership position? Like, what mistakes have they made that you're trying to learn from? Mm-hmm. Because we've talked about it. Like, a lot of people do support the women's game. A lot of people do say, okay, it does take time to develop a brand or an audience or fanship, fine. But, at some point you're like a shook up soda can. Like, you want to get this thing going and you're ready to rock. What have you been drawing on from the WNBA?
Well, I would start by saying, one, that I was sitting here in Toronto watching the WNBA draft on television on multiple channels. And it hit me that it's like, this is awesome, right? I never saw anything like this when I was young. When I was young, I had dreams that I would be drafted into the NHL, first round NHL draft pick. And, I'd never thought about how unrealistic that was, but that's the only thing I saw as being possible. So I love what it represents. I love that, they did a big feature about David Stern and his visionary ideals for the women's game long before it was something that everybody talked about. The real legacy piece for him. And, I remember after he passed away, them saying that one of his most, his biggest accomplishments in his mind was the creation of the WNBA, because he knew that was going to be a legacy piece for him. And I think, in addition, they talked a lot about Kobe Bryant. And of course, he's one of the greatest basketball players, if not the greatest basketball player that ever played. But what I'm seeing a lot now is what he did for the women's game. And he's being remembered in such bright lights for what he did for his daughter, for WNBA players, for bringing light to it, for supporting it. And those things, I don't know, you need people like that to champion it, I think. And they had that early. I had a chance to speak to Val Ackerman a number of months ago, and she was the first commissioner of the WNBA. And she went through some of the things when they started the league. And of course, they made mistakes. They're almost 25 years old now, which is crazy.
Wow.
She mentioned they expanded pretty quickly, and maybe those are some decisions they wouldn't make in hindsight. But to me, it's really just about like making that investment, and the NBA invested in it. They saw it as a way to engage fans, as a way to keep the game healthy. So many young girls are playing basketball now because of the WNBA. So, we look at them in admiration, really. And I'd like to hope that we can get to where they are more quickly, because we can look at what they've done and learn from their success, from their failures. And hopefully, this is a place that we can be. We see their athletes now being treated like professional athletes, and you're going to see that be rewarded in performance and in entertainment value. And there's going to be revenue that gets generated because of this. But we know it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a huge investment that needs to be made in the game. But it will get to the point where, I remember in the WNBA finals, it was on every channel here in Canada. People were in bars watching it, and this is not stuff we normally see, but it was so cool to see.
Well, I think that element of time is interesting that you bring up, given that, Kobe has passed. I was really shook up recently about Colby Cave and just how, his passing. And even, in starting this podcast, one of my thoughts was I don't want to wait anymore. There is a cost to waiting, and there is a cost for allowing, your dream or your goals to be put on hold. And every day that goes by is another day that you don't get to live it. And I guess that's been, as an athlete, and going back to the word of selfishness, it is something that I experience and sometimes feel, guilty for, that I am always on the clock and I do make decisions that are self-serving to protect my skill and things like that. But that really brings me full circle to part of why I want to start this podcast and build a platform to lend my name and hopefully the attention of the audience. Granted, they trust me and my word and my morals and my values in that. That when I do point them in the direction, say for a cause that I care about, like the women's game, like mental health advocacy, I think these are, important topics, and I really I'm excited to see, because I have seen the momentum, I have seen the consistent, effort on the parts of the leaders in your game, like Kendall, and I do think there's an element where every fan of the game, with hockey, part of the challenge is, right, you need a frozen ice surface. It's not easily accessible. You need, skates on your feet. Every kid in the United States grows up, shooting hoops casually in gym class or whatever, throwing a baseball around with mom or dad or a softball. And that's one of the challenges that hockey faces. Unless you're really gifted the game, unless someone gives you a pair of skates and says, here, kid, go put these on and see if you like it, it's really hard to just happen by mistake. So that's why I think as hockey players in general, male or female, there needs to be that we need to carry the torch of our game. We need to take that seriously so that it continues the growth, because we all know how special our value is in the sense of tradition and how hardworking it is that you have to be to have any success. But that's always been my, I guess, eye into it from because it always comes down to dollar, right? Investment and business. Can it make money or not? And the NHL is even trying to figure out ways to maximize our revenues and things like that. But I urge more and more players and fans of the game to wrap your arm around somebody and bring them into the sport. Because once you're hooked, you're hooked. Like this game, people love this game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're not, I don't want to say, a lot of people think, well, you should support it because it's the right thing to do. And you can feel that way, but we also believe there's some value here. There's, as you talk about, we want the game to be healthy. For the game to be healthy, you need more and more people playing, girls and boys. More female fans. More females that love the game are going to want to go to a bar and watch a game or buy a ticket or get their kids in the game. So it does keep coming back to business reasons why this is valuable too. It's not just about, trying to help out the women. I think there's a real strong business argument for what we're trying to achieve and in trying to keep the game healthy.
And I think given your leadership role, I haven't seen all the, efforts that you've made, to try and create that unified voice in the women's game. But, from my side of the table, from what I'm hearing and receiving, it seems you're doing a really strong job developing that. And congratulations, frankly, because I know it's not easy. Like we're going through it with, our NHLPA calls and things like that. You've got 700 players, all with different walks of life and different salaries and different contracts and things like that. It can be difficult to have, one mission. but I as far as I can tell, as someone who's had, more than just a casual interest, I guess, to me, it sounds like you've done a really nice job continuing to gather everyone in one boat and moving this, this effort on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, and I give all the credit to the players. I mean, I came in and I really work for them, but they're committed to this, and it's really admirable. And we're just we know the importance of that singular voice. And I did listen to your earlier podcasts, and you talked at one point about what it's going to say on a tombstone someday, and it's not about your accomplishments in hockey or goals or assists or founding a multi-million-dollar company. It's going to be about, how many people you impacted, how many people, love and respected you. And I think there is this overarching theme that we carry with us, that we are determined to leave the game better. And we're determined to create something so that the next 5 or 6 year old girl that wants to lace up a pair of skates can see a realistic dream for her. And it's powerful stuff, but it doesn't happen without everyone, being committed to it. And we're really lucky that we all have a shared vision in that.
That's beautiful. And I mean, that's really been to leave something better than you found it. And it really has been part of my MO, even as a professional, in locker rooms and things like that. You have a lot of ups and downs over an 82 game season. It's interesting. My producer, Colin Steingart, he texted me after like the 20 or 30 game mark. We had talked about last summer when we were still developing this vision for this podcast even. He texted me, one of my goals was to be the most positive player in the NHL. Now, not like, cheerleader, pom-pom, like, we lost 7-0 and coach is ripping us and, I'm, screwed around on the bus or whatever, but, truly trying to just uplift in every situation. And he just texted me out of the blue. He goes, "Hey, how's it going in terms of being the most positive player in the NHL?" And I was injured at the time. I was a little sour,
Right.
And it's, I urge you to keep me accountable in our efforts, because I'll continue to, try to give a voice to, female hockey players. I'll continue to try to grow the men's game, because I really do think, that the rising tide, raises all boats, and this game of hockey is so special. It's such a fun game that love goes so deep that, I want to gift that to somebody the same way I was, because I didn't go out as a 4-year-old and go get my own skates. I didn't drive myself to hockey practice,
Yeah. And, we appreciate that. And as I said, it's, I don't even know, we can't thank people enough that really step up and speak with us. And it's so important. I just finished a book called Legacy about the All Blacks.
Yep.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read that. And right at the end of the book, it resonated with me. One of their chapters and one of their leadership principles was around be a good ancestor. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to carry this torch. We're supposed to make it better. We want to be looked at as a good ancestor to these next people that play the game. And that's the most important thing in our minds is just leave it better.
It's so strong. I guess one other question, I guess, or scenario I wanted to picture, so we covered, what it was like growing up. It's cold out back. Your older brother plays. Your dad's got the backyard hockey rink. I know what that looks like. I've seen the Tim Hortons commercials and that. That's awesome. And then I've seen you on TV. With the gold medal and getting that wrapped around your neck. I do want to know, like, what is your best or craziest or most memorable celebration story? Because that's something that I really want to experience in my life. Is I want to win a Stanley Cup, so I can be a part of that party. And I'm not necessarily a partier, but given the right circumstance,
Yeah. Obviously we've had a chance to have some pretty good ones. And I'm going to give you two. Our first one in Salt Lake City was an interesting one because Salt Lake City was a dry state, and so there wasn't a lot of partying happening. Well, I shouldn't say partying. There was partying. There wasn't a lot of drinking happening. But I remember after the game, we went back to this area where the friends and family were, and you go and you see your parents and everybody. And a bunch of our players were just sort of sitting on the couch. They just looked exhausted. And we were in that stage of just being physically, mentally spent. Like we had nothing left. And it was such it was a beautiful thing to see that it was like, we just left it all. And it was like, that was the Cinderella story. That was the game we weren't supposed to win. That was a game where, we spent almost half the game shorthanded and this, just incredible story. And that's what I remember from it, was that we just had nothing left. And it was really cool. And then, probably opposite to that in Vancouver, when we won in Canada, that was obviously pretty special to get a chance to play in Canada.
Definitely not a dry celebration that time, I imagine.
No. But to play in Canada and, everything was about the pressure and how we were going to handle the pressure in Canada, and not only just to win in Canada, but to win hockey in Canada, which was different. And after the fact, we ended up on the ice, and as we did every time, but somehow this time it got in the media, and, players had a beer and had some cigars and different things. And it was on the front page of like the LA Times. It was on the front page in Europe, all these women with beers and cigars. And we took a little heat for it, but I wouldn't change a thing. It was one of those moments where, and again, this is a female thing, I think, the fact that women are drinking beers.
I wanted to
and none of us smokes. Yeah, none of us smoke cigars, obviously. But it's one of those things that you take a picture with a cigar.
Whatever you want, do whatever you want.
So it was, so it was one of those moments. But when you have that much pressure on you, and when you look at the Olympic Games, it's really about 4 years leading up to one game. And as you know, in one game, anything can happen. You can be sick that day. You can not play well. You can make one mistake. It's so finite. And when you actually accomplish that after 4 years of thinking about that one night, that 1 3-hour period, and you accomplish it, it's unbelievable. And to be able to share that with teammates and really just enjoy it. So definitely had lots of good celebrations, but those would be two I really look back on fondly.
Well, that's honestly why I wanted to bring it up, because if we do have, parents out there or coaches or, young players, boy or girl, I wanted to, talk a little bit about what that celebration looks like, because that's what I think of in my training. That's what I think of in my life when I'm trying to do things right, so I can picture, skating around the ice with that Stanley Cup and picture the champagne, shower and the creation of those memories. Good for you, all those years of hard work, all those decades of staying with it and being able to leave this game with, such a, the accolades you have and the memories you have. And I commend you. Thank you for sharing. I hope, there's the development of a women's league where we can have, I don't know if it's a Stanley Cup or something like that, but where we can implant that picture in young girls' minds of that celebration, that pinnacle, the end all be all, the what you've dreamed of moment where you see a grown man, or woman turn into that 6-year-old again they were, counting down the clock, shooting pucks on their driveway. And, thank you for sharing. It fired up my, juice for my afternoon workout, after that, trying to have that.
Yeah.
But Jayna, and I bring this up and we'll wrap up. I just want to ask, if there's anything else really speaking to you, anything that really lights you on fire right now in the world, anything you're trying to instill in young people, the group I'm oftentimes trying to motivate, I consider us like the 20-somethings trying to do something, positive. There are a lot of people struggling right now, out of their routine. If there's anything speaking to you right now, I was just curious, given the circumstances, so unprecedented, what you've been thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, lots of things. I think in many ways, it's so difficult for people, and but there's a few silver linings maybe that happen, and one being this concept of just slowing life down a little bit and enjoying the family time, and life has gotten pretty crazy and
fast.
That working 24/7 and responding to emails within 3 minutes or all this stuff that's just really, really intense and it's heavy. And this concept of being able to just slow down a bit, be at home, enjoy those times is something I think about a lot. I have 3 kids at home right now, so schools are closed, and my appreciation for teachers and what they do. My mom was a teacher, so I always had an appreciation for teachers, and I value education in a big way. But it's it's a tough job every single day to go and teach 25, 30, maybe even more kids in a class, day in and day out, keep them engaged. And so I think about them a lot. And then I think about just finding a way to contribute to make things a little bit better for someone. And maybe maybe all you can do is make a donation. Maybe you can give some time. I don't know. Everyone's in a different scenario, but just finding a way to really be a positive influence in someone's life right now, I think is important. Even if it's just, a phone call to someone you don't talk to that much. It's this isolation thing is tough. Yeah. And especially for those that are alone, it's really tough.
Well, thank you for, contributing some of your time today. I'm sure a lot of listeners will really gain a lot from, gaining some insight to your character, to your championship pedigree, to your desire to contribute and leave the world a better place. How can people continue to follow along with your journey, to follow along with the PWHPA? How can people get in contact with you if they want to support your mission further?
Yeah, we have the PWHPA.com as our website. Most of our athletes are all on social media, pretty easy to find. I'm on social media, pretty easy to find. So, we'd love everyone to join our team and really be a part of just driving awareness and celebrating our athletes. And if you have a chance to come see a game, come see a game. You're going to get a chance to see some of the best players, but you're going to get a chance to meet them too, most likely. There's such great ambassadors and people that are just great role models for everyone. So I don't know, I appreciate your time, as I said again, and your platform and speaking and, being a part of our team, because it's so important for us. And you might be the favorite NHL player of women's hockey fans, I think.
Trying, I really appreciate that. And thanks again for your time. I gained a lot from our conversation. Truly exceptional individual, exceptional hockey player that, your authenticity, I think, was a value you mentioned in some of our opening comments. And you ooze it. You're very bright, and I appreciate our time together. And because it hasn't been easy, even for me as a player, to stay motivated, to keep training for that goal. And then I think of women's hockey training for a game 4 years from now. That's just the moral fortitude, I guess. So thank you for your time today, Jayna. All the best. You got a fan in me, and thank you.
All right. Thanks, Connor. Mutual respect. Good luck with this.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Jayna Hefford, what an exceptional hockey player for sure, but a leader in our hockey community. I wish her all the best in her creation and of the Women's Professional Hockey League. Thank you, Jayna, for your time today. I know I learned a lot. To all my listeners, I'm sure you did. What an incredible force, really. What an incredible individual. I also wanted to take this time to shout out, these are not sponsored, but just companies, brands that I think are doing it right out there. Dream chasers, small business owners. I love Dirty Root. Dirty Root is in West Loop, Chicago, like a carry-out cafe. They offer the cleanest ingredients I know of. No canola oil. Everything's organic. Truly impressed with their efforts and glad they exist. And I'm hoping, you can vote with your dollar and keep them open on the other side of this crisis. And also another restaurant providing the best they can, for the health of their community, Impact Kitchen up in Toronto. That was a place I used to frequent as a Maple Leaf all the time. Feels like forever ago now, but when I was first traded there playing for the Marlies, I used to go, 3-4 times a week. Really loved what they're providing in the community in Toronto. And also I wanted to thank you during this time, our listener. If you're still with us, please like, subscribe, comment, share with mom and dad, teach them how to listen to podcasts. I wouldn't be here without you guys. I'm trying to continue to bring a product and a service and a podcast that you can be proud to listen to and continue to gain something from. I value your insight. I value your commentary. Thank you for sticking with us. And I'm so excited to see where we continue to build. Thank you.